In 1959, the United States of America gained its 50th member. Hawaii, which had been a territory of the nation since 1898, earned its place as the final star on the Stars and Stripes. It quickly became known across the world as a vacation paradise, a land of luaus hula, dancing volcanoes, and Pearl Harbor. The islands became a symbol of beauty, culture, and leisure, yet much of Hawaii's original history and identity remains unknown to most Americans. The story of how the islands became part of the United States is far more complicated and often tragic. Before Hawaii was ever a territory or state, it was an independent and unified kingdom that had stood strong for 8 decades. The monarchy was established under King Kamehameha, who united the islands into one nation, and it remained under native Hawaiian rulers until Queen Liliuokalani. The Hawaiian kingdom was fully sovereign, forming alliances with foreign powers like the United States, Britain, and others, but remaining independent. For centuries, the native Hawaiians, a Polynesian people from the Marquesas Islands, had lived peacefully after making their way across the Pacific in canoes to settle on the Big Island. By the 19th century, they had established a flourishing society with deep traditions, strong leadership, and their own monarchy. Their culture revolved around respect for the land and sea, with farming, fishing, and navigation forming the backbone of daily life. Religion was intertwined with nature as Hawaiians honored their gods through chants, dance, and rituals that carried deep spiritual meaning. In 1887, however, this balance of power was challenged. King Kalakaua was forced to sign what became known as the Bayonet Constitution. The name reflected the threat of force that hung over the king as he was pressured by residents and an armed militia to sign away his authority. Drafted by Lauren A. Thurston, Hawaii's Minister of the Interior, the new constitution reduced the king to little more than a figurehead and created a constitutional monarchy. Roughly 3,000 residents pushed for this change, yet most of them were not native Hawaiians. They were outsiders who had settled in the islands over the past decades. The Hawaiian people had long welcomed foreigners and built friendly ties with both Europeans and Americans. This openness led to an influx of migrants, many of whom were Protestant missionaries who traveled with the hope of spreading Christianity. Despite the strong cultural and spiritual traditions already present in Hawaii, these missionaries were often successful in convincing Hawaiians to adopt Christian teachings, or at least combine them with their own beliefs. Over time, Christianity spread across the islands, and by 1840 the monarchy declared itself a Christian kingdom, with a constitution rooted in Christian values. For the missionaries, this was a victory, but their descendants sought more than just religious influence. Many became businessmen who wanted economic power as well as political sway. These new Hawaiian-born descendants of foreign missionaries and settlers became increasingly active in shaping the government, often to the disadvantage of the native population. They pushed for policies that gave them commercial advantages and greater control. By the mid to late 1800s, Hawaii's commercial ties with Britain and America were growing rapidly, and both nations sent troops at different points to maintain order during political unrest. While Hawaii remained an independent kingdom, its sovereignty was steadily being undermined by those who had come from abroad. The same group of foreign-born and foreign-descent residents who had pressured King Kalakaua into surrendering his power soon became the true puppet masters of Hawaiian politics. When King Kalakaua died, his sister, Liliuokalani, rose to the throne. She was determined to restore the independence and authority of the monarchy. In 1893, she announced her plan to draft a new constitution that would return Hawaii to an absolute monarchy and free it from the grip of businessmen and outsiders. For the powerful foreign elites, this move was unacceptable. Their reaction was swift and decisive. On January 14, 1893, a group of European and American businessmen, lawyers, and allies formed what they called the Committee of Safety. Among its leaders was Sanford Dole, cousin of the owner of the Hawaiian Fruit Company, which would later become the famous Dole brand. Their goal was nothing less than the overthrow of Queen Liliuokalani and the monarchy itself. Knowing they lacked the strength to do it alone, the committee sought help from the United States. The U.S. Minister to Hawaii, John L. Stevens, was easily convinced. He ordered 300 U.S. Marines ashore, claiming they were there to protect American lives. In reality, their presence gave the Committee of Safety the muscle it needed to carry out a coup. Queen Liliuokalani believed that her people deserved to reclaim their sovereignty. She had faith that her foreign allies would never stoop so low as to overthrow her rule, but she quickly realized that resisting the committee would mean firing on American troops and starting a war her small kingdom could not win. To spare her people bloodshed, she surrendered under protest. In a letter to Sanford Dole, she wrote that she yielded her authority until the government of the United States should undo the actions of its representatives and restore her rightful place as sovereign. She trusted that justice would prevail, but justice never came. Dole and his allies immediately established a provisional government to replace the Queen with themselves in power. Within a year, Sanford B. Dole declared the creation of the Republic of Hawaii with himself as president. The monarchy that had ruled for 80 years was gone. Queen Liliuokalani continued to hope the United States would recognize the illegality of the coup. Her appeals reached President Grover Cleveland, whose administration commissioned the Blount Report to investigate. The findings were damning. The report declared the overthrow illegal and labeled it an act of war committed by the United States, through Minister Stevens and the Committee of Safety. Yet, despite this clear conclusion, the provisional government refused to yield power. To complicate matters further, the U.S. Congress ordered its own investigation known as the Morgan Report. Unlike the Blount Report, it found no wrongdoing and declared everyone innocent of blame. The contradictory reports left the Queen stranded, and her monarchy lost. A few years later, any remaining hopes were crushed. With the election of President William McKinley in 1897, the United States began to openly discuss annexing Hawaii. Negotiations began almost immediately, and McKinley showed little resistance to the idea. On July 7, 1898, the Newlands Resolution passed officially annexing Hawaii as a U.S. territory. Queen Liliuokalani's plea for restoration was ignored, and Hawaii's independence was gone. Over the next half-century, the islands underwent massive changes. The descendants of missionaries and foreign settlers prospered while the native Hawaiians struggled under the new system. Their culture, language, and traditions were steadily eroded as American influence grew dominant. Yet, by the mid-20th century, Hawaii was deeply tied to the United States both strategically and culturally. During World War II, the bombing of Pearl Harbor cemented Hawaii's role as a vital American outpost in the Pacific. This event, though tragic, also tied Hawaii even more closely to the American identity. In 1959, after decades as a U.S. territory, Hawaii's people were given the chance to decide on statehood. On June 27th, a referendum was held. Over 94% of voters supported the move to become a state. Just months earlier, President Dwight D. Eisenhower had already signed the Hawaii Admission Act, and on August 21st, Hawaii officially became the 50th state of the United States of America. Ironically, this final step came long after the true sovereignty of Hawaii had been taken, but it was embraced by most of the population at the time. For many, it symbolized stability, opportunity, and recognition after generations of change. Yet for others, particularly among native Hawaiians, it was a bittersweet milestone that marked not only acceptance into the American Union, but also the permanent loss of a kingdom and culture that once thrived on its own. Hawaii today is celebrated for its beauty, culture, and role as an American paradise, yet beneath the surface lies a history of colonization resistance and resilience. The story of Hawaii's path to statehood is not only about its tropical beaches and welcoming traditions, but also about the struggle of its native people who once ruled their islands as an independent kingdom and whose queen was dethroned by foreign businessmen with the help of American power. It is a story that continues to shape the identity of Hawaii and its place within the United States, reminding us that even the most idyllic paradise can carry a past marked by conflict and loss.